Hey there! Are you interested in connecting with travelers and av geeks and getting access to exclusive travel-themed events and giveaways? App in the Air has all this and more in their private community. Check out the app for free using the link in the show notes and get 20% off of your next flight when you book directly through App in the Air by using the code Geobreeze at checkout. Thank you to App in the Air for partnering with this episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. Welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipino-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So let's get hacking.
It's really hard to figure out what the award availability on LATAM is because for some reason Expert Flyer removed all the award availability. It doesn't show you anymore, but you can chat and ask them. And that's how I found some really good deals. And there's a lot of open availability because it's hard to book on points, it makes there more availability on points. And actually, a lot of people think you can't book LATAM with British Airways anymore, but they've actually retained their alliance. What British Airways did was a little bit sneaky. They removed the LATAM from populating in their search results, but it's all still there. So you have to call. So one sneaky thing you could do if you have British Airways or the Iberia Avios is contact AsiaMiles first, find out about the availability, and then call British Airways.
Hey there, Points people. You just heard a clip from Freddy Lansky from Points Panda. Freddy is the CEO and owner of Points Panda, an award travel consultancy and points blog with a U.S. airline news focus. He's flown first class in Korean Air, Cathay Pacific, Lufthansa, British Airways, and more. His other hobbies include surfing, hiking, and studying foreign languages. Freddy is from Atlanta, Georgia, and has called Mexico City his home base since 2015. In this episode, Freddy and I discuss some of the best routes for flying in and around Latin America, whether you're looking to do that on a short haul from Atlanta to Mexico City or a long-haul business class flight all the way to South America. One of the main transfer partners we discuss in this episode is Avianca LifeMiles, which is great for their rewards program, but not necessarily great for their hard product airplanes. You can transfer points to Avianca from American Express, Capital One, Citi, and Marriott. Some of the most popular cards with each of these programs is the Amex Gold, Capital One Venture X, and Citi Premier. If you would like to apply for any of these cards, please be sure you do not apply through Google, but rather use a friend or creator's referral or affiliate link. If you are interested in supporting this show when you apply for your next card, check out geobreezetravel.com/cards. And now, on with the show. Hey, Freddy, welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Julia.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here and to learn about lots of different award program tricks in Latin America. Before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started into the game of points and miles?
So it was through my last business, actually. It was called iChess. My partner bought me out in early 2019, and he ended up selling the company as well. But we would film chess courses like the game of chess. And as we moved up the ranks, we were working with higher and higher end people that kind of you could consider themselves celebs in the space. So they always wanted to meet the owners and everything. And so it made more sense, especially since I already knew about videography and all that, to fly me out and just handle the business part and shaking their hands and so on, and also do all the recordings, right? And in the beginning, it was like a once or twice a year thing, and I was kind of like excited about it. But by 2017, 2018, it was like every 4 or 6 weeks I was heading to Europe or something for just a couple of days, and it was totally exhausting. And so I was never curious about business class before that. I just thought it was something that was way out of the possibility of what someone like me was making at the time. Plus, I felt I didn't really need it because, at that time I had more of a backpacker mentality. So I'm going to go to a place for a few months, relax. It wasn't a business person mentality, but I really was desperate to find a way to get these cheaper business class tickets And at the time, I was already doing, the Chase Sapphire and some of these other cards that have points. But I didn't even know that you could transfer the points or what that even was, because as you probably know, they don't actively promote it because they want you to do a stupid redemption like a gift card or something like that, or at least use their portal. For the credit card companies, transferring the points is usually the most expensive option for them, so they're not like too keen to promote it. But then I started discovering different blogs about how it was just really sad once I had discovered it, how many flights I had booked with the port that the business class ticket transferring would have actually been cheaper than the economy ticket just through the portal, but I had no idea. And so then I started getting into it, and I got really, it has like a certain kind of like gambling or addiction type element where I got into it fast and hard. And then I started getting really into it. And we also were getting so many points from all these royalties that we were paying out by credit card. Also doing like paid advertising with Google and Facebook. You get triple, quadruple points. So we were getting, I don't know, say 30, 40,000 points a month on top of all the sign up bonuses and everything. So we were awash with points. And so first I was using them for business, but then I was like, well, this is kind of fun. I can use this to stay in five-star hotels and for my own personal, to start flying business class for personal reasons as well. And yeah, after that, I sold a business. I started another business in points called Points Panda. It started as a travel hacking consultancy. So you pay me a yearly rate for unlimited help, with credit cards and the earning side of things, and unlimited award bookings as well. And I don't really promote that service very much anymore. Now I'm more focused on just growing the blog kind of in a traditional manner. I'd say like my site is kind of a smaller version of the Points Guy or 1 Mile at a Time, and anything like that. We're just promoting airline news and credit card news. And we also work with cardratings.com. So we put affiliate links to all these different credit cards as well. And that's how we make money. And yeah, not so active on social media, really just doing Google and YouTube and everything, and just growing that. And that's how I got into it.
What were some of the first cards that you opened when you were doing this, both from the personal side and also the business side?
Yeah, so I think it was like 2014, 2015. The Chase Sapphire just came out. I remember when the Chase Sapphire Reserve came out and they were offering 100,000 points. I think that was what, like 2016, 2017. And I don't know what it is with travelers and like digital nomads, but it seems like for everyone living abroad, the Chase Sapphire Reserve is the go to card. It's pretty normal. Like when we're all splitting the bill at dinner, it's like four Chase Sapphire Reserves. I know now a lot of different companies that come out, Citi and Capital One, and then Amex all tweak their offering basically to compete with Chase. But for a while, I feel that was the main game in town. I think I had some Amex cards open as well, but I mean some of them were cash back. I guess it was the Chase Sapphire Preferred was the first card that had transfer partners, even though I had no idea at the time that you could use them in that way. It was just a lot of years I was just putting my personal spend on it. And then, when it came time to book a plane ticket, I would just go into the portal and book. And that's how I had used the points for years.
At what point were you doing all of this in the US, or where have you been located for most of the time that you've been doing the points game?
Yeah, so I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and from 2010 to 2015, after I finished college in 2009, for those 5 years, I was more or less a full time like traveler, digital nomad. So somewhere between kind of transitioning from a backpacker to more of a more stable lifestyle, like kind of digital nomad, but traveling every 2 or 3 months instead of every 2 or 3 days. But then I got kind of tired of that as well by the time around my 30th birthday 5 years ago. I was ready to settle. Plus, I have a dog as well. It's getting kind of complicated moving with him. And yeah, I checked out a few different cities. I looked at Medellin. I looked at Playa del Carmen. Those are the two main hotspots for people working on their laptop and everything. But in the end, I chose Mexico City for a variety of reasons. And I've been there since 2015. So basically, the entire time I'm doing points, I've been living abroad.
Why did you choose Mexico City?
It was just A lot of reasons. It's just very practical. I wanted all the benefits of living abroad without having to deal with being a 20-hour flight away. It was the biggest surprise for me was up until very recently how few internet workers and people working online and work from home until COVID hit were in Mexico. The very, very few. And the few that were there were all heavily concentrated in like Playa del Carmen and Tulum, and not really to in Mexico City. There really just really weren't a lot of foreigners working, internet entrepreneurs and so on. And I figured, well, why are these people all living in Thailand and Bali and all these places that are so far away when they could just be here in Mexico and get all the benefits? And lo and behold, once COVID hit, all those countries shut down, everywhere shut down, and everybody, who runs these internet businesses like you and me just started coming to Mexico in massive, massive numbers. And now the country started opening up again. But I think a lot of the people that came to Mexico are not leaving now. And Mexico City in particular has really, really changed. I think this is just a theory I have about like U.S. news and everything, kind of painting. I don't get me wrong. Like there are tons of dodgy, terrible things that happen in Mexico and crime every day. But this idea that your life is in mortal danger, or something that that you're gonna get beat up and kidnapped the second, like that's, I don't know. I think that's more like fantasy than the reality, as long as you use common sense. But people didn't know that until I think there's like a turning point recently where so many foreigners arrive from the US and Europe and everybody's doing just fine there, that stigma and this incorrect perception has kind of faded out a little bit. And that's what's been bringing so many foreigners to Mexico. So now I feel like it's reached a tipping point where more people are realizing it's perfectly safe to go and live. Well, not perfectly safe, but safe enough, let's say. And yeah, that's just led to huge amounts of people coming to Playa, to Mexico City, and some of these other parts. And it's been cool. Before it felt a little bit quiet. I know a couple other people running a website or whatever, but it's just totally changed now. I'm going every meetup I go to now. I'm meeting tons of people that are running, not just running internet businesses, but now corporate people that work for big companies. But these meetups now in Mexico are huge. Like I'm talking like every time I go to one, it used to be hard for me to get like 4 or 5 people together for like an entrepreneur's dinner or something like that. Now, every time you go to a meetup, the restaurants, like they can't even let people in anymore because they always just overwhelm them with like hundreds of foreigners showing up. Like it's really changed a lot. So, yeah.
Are you predominantly based just in Mexico City, or do you travel a lot within
It's my
Mexico as well?
It's my base. I travel a lot in Mexico. I travel a lot between Mexico and the US. It's one of the main reasons I like living in Mexico, is being so close to the US. And then I'd say I'm probably there about 70% of the time, 75% of the time, and a quarter of the time I'm traveling. And it's really easy too, because between flying on points and subleasing my apartment, which I live in a very touristy neighborhood called Condesa, there's these WhatsApp. Everyone's so desperate to get off Airbnb right now because of the crazy taxes and fees or whatever. So I'll just post in one of these groups, okay, I'm leaving these 2 weeks or I'm leaving these 3 weeks. I'll have somebody take it and pay me in crypto or whatever it is almost instantly. So between getting that money for my lease and flying on points, I mean, like this trip would have costed 3 or 4 thousand bucks, but between assuming I'd actually paid a business class cash fare, which I probably wouldn't have. But let's just say, even if I hadn't, let's just say I bought an economy ticket instead, plus not getting the money to sublease my place, would have been like $2,500. And that's kind of like the cheaper range. And now I got to travel to Bogota, Medellin. I have tons of friends there, in Lima as well, and it's cost me basically nothing. So it's good.
What are your favorite routes and airlines to use when traveling between the US and Mexico?
The route I fly by far the most is Mexico City to Atlanta, which is where I live and where I grew up. And the only airline that flies it is Delta, which is crazy because they carry 500,000 passengers a year in that route. And usually a route that has 500,000 passengers a year would have 3 or 4 competitors, but Delta's made sure that they're the only one. And yeah, the service is good, but it's pretty outrageous pricing. Another reason to stock up on your points is sometimes these economy and short haul flights, and when you're flying Delta or one of these big airlines that have a monopoly, can be really expensive too. I think it's usually like $500 if you're lucky. It can be as much as like $600-700 in economy, which for a 2.5 hour round trip flight, I think it's a bit excessive. So I fly that route a lot. I fly Mexico City to Austin quite a bit too. That's another one. They only have one airplane a day, and again, AeroMexico has a monopoly on it. And oh my God, they charge you up the wazoo. It's like $400, $500 round trip, even though it's a like not even a 2 hour flight. It's like 600 miles, but there's like four airlines that fly to San Antonio, which is an hour away, and then you can take an Uber or a bus. But who wants to land 80 miles away from where they're trying to go? If you wanna fly direct, there's only one flight a day, and you got to pay up.
Are you normally paying for these in cash with those ridiculous prices that you're quoting, or is there a way to do this on points to save on that?
Well, it depends. I mean, as a fellow point expert, that in recent years, the cash price for business class tickets has gone down, whereas the price on points, there's been massive point devaluations when you're transferring, has gone way up. So it used to be 3 or 4 years ago, if you're flying long distance business class, you don't even need to look at the cash price. Like you're going to find a transfer that's a way better deal. Like now it starts to get a little bit more blurry. A lot of the times, just using the portal, especially if you have like an Amex Platinum or Chase Sapphire Reserve, where you like a third of the points back, and ends up making more sense, right? And I think, I don't know, with this particular flight, usually the points hasn't really made sense because they charge $500. Let's say a 400 round trip, but with Delta Sky Miles, it's like 40,000 points round trip. So I guess it comes out to about 1 cent per point, which I guess is okay for airline points, but I think for credit card transferable currency, you should be aiming to get a little more. Plus, when you book through the portal as well, the airline sees it as a cash flight. It is a cash flight, and then you can end up getting some points and miles on the back end as well.
How about within Mexico? Does AeroMexico or any of the other ones work better if you're flying from, say, Mexico City to Cabo or Mexico City to Cancun? Or are there other airlines that you should consider instead?
Well, within Mexico, the only airline offering business class right now is AeroMexico. And another interesting anecdote, because so many of these long distance international flights got cut, AeroMexico has been using their 787 for some of these really short flights, like from Mexico City to Cancun. So if you wanted to try a lay flat seat, I've seen sometimes on this 2 hour flight, maybe $70 or $80 in business class at the cheapest times. And so that's a easy way to get to experience that. And yeah, all the other airline, I mean, Volaris and Interjet are essentially like Spirit or Frontier or whatever. They're all just super bare bones. And that's fine. I mean, so is their pricing, so you know what to expect, but don't expect any luxury other than using your priority pass for the lounge, and that's about it. And then there was another great airline called Interjet, but they didn't make it through COVID, and they were great. They were to Mexico what JetBlue is to the US. They had like 35 inches of legroom in all the seats, and really comfortable, unlimited snacks and alcohol for everyone, and it was just one class of service. But they went out. So I would say, AeroMexico. And then, of course, between the US, you also can choose, Delta or American or United as well. And they have their business class offerings. And, for those living in California, a really good hack is to drive to Tijuana and take like the CBS border crossing. It used to be you had to go to a regular border crossing, and then you had to take a taxi to the Tijuana airport. But now you can park or take an Uber directly into the Tijuana airport, and they built this crossing that just goes straight in. Right. And from there, you can get really, really cheap tickets to anywhere in Mexico. Right. So if you live in San Diego, definitely worth it. If you live in Los Angeles, it might also be worth it, depending on traffic, just based on where you're going in Mexico. Because it might be that there's a direct flight from Tijuana, and from Los Angeles, there isn't, somewhere in Mexico. Because Tijuana is a very major airport in Mexico. I think it's their third or fourth biggest. Most flights in Mexico, domestically in Mexico, are these cheaper airlines, right? Viva Aerobus, Volaris. There's a few other small ones like Aeromar, but the only traditional airline that has like business class and all this other stuff and a lounge is AeroMexico.
So since they're generally like the unsexy airlines and so cheap, are these ones that you're generally just using cash prices for as well rather than points, or is there a point sweet spot if you're ever flying within Mexico?
I would. I mean, it depends. Like everything, Tijuana is farther from Mexico City geographically than Atlanta is. It's like a 3.5 hour flight. Tijuana to Cancun is a 5 hour flight. And then from some of these other places, like say you're coming from San Diego and you're all the way on the northwest tip of the country in Tijuana, and you got to get down, I don't know, Puerto Escondido or something. That's a nice upgrade to fly business class on Aeromexico, even if it's just old fashioned recliner, not like a state of the art lay flat seat. It's still way better than economy, right? And in that case, it very well might make sense to use points, right? Air France, what do they call it, their program, Flying Blue.
Okay.
Yeah, it used to be good, not so much anymore. Delta has occasional deals, but Delta's always tricky. For me, US to Mexico, most of the routes aren't really all that long. And for me, it's more important to be able to fly direct, right? So say I'm in, I don't know, let's make up, say Chicago, and Chicago has a direct flight to Puerto Vallarta, but it's with one of these cheap airlines. Or I can take, American Airlines or Mexico, but then I got a layover. I would probably just upgrade, to the front seat and pay for all the baggage in advance so there's no surprises. I would just prefer the direct route. But I guess the short answer to your question is usually it just makes more sense to book in cash or using a portal as cash.
Yeah. If you're not in the South United States, like if you're further up north and flying to Mexico, I know a couple of popular things are to do Southwest Companion Pass because then there's not really any sweet spots because you're either paying cash or you're getting a flat 1.5, 1.6 cents per point, but one
Yeah.
of you is free. And Southwest has a lot of routes now that go directly to Cancun or that go directly to Los Cabos. I know that when I was based in Denver, we had a direct flight to Cancun. JetBlue also has quite a few flights into Mexico, especially if you're either in the New York area, Florida, or really anywhere else on the East Coast. There's a lot of direct flights on JetBlue as well.
Yeah, JetBlue is great. It's sad. We until a few years ago, JetBlue, Southwest, a few of the other ones were flying to Mexico City, but they all left. They all fly to the tourist areas now, but they don't fly to Mexico City. And apparently, the reason this is way pre-COVID, but the reason that they failed and they all left in 2018, 2019 was they didn't realize that apparently Mexicans, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's an insanely high amount. I think like 70 or 80% of plane tickets in Mexico are booked through travel agents. And they didn't like properly plan to push that market or whatever and get them to promote those tickets. And so that's why they failed. But yeah, I love JetBlue the few times that I get to fly them, but they're always going between like tourist areas in Mexico and the Caribbean, like to New York and Boston and things like that. So those aren't typical routes, and JetBlue has a very small presence in Atlanta. So I haven't got a chance to use them as well. But the few times that they have a really good economy product with like free snacks and TV and stuff like that. It's way better experience than a Mexican discount airline for sure.
If you are listening to this episode thinking, I wish I could travel like this, but I don't know where to start, I offer free credit card consultations by email at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. Additionally, I host a masterclass and group coaching session each month through the Patreon. We've also added a new Patreon feature. Once you've been in the Patreon for 12 consecutive months, I will gift you a vacation voucher to the city of your choice. I've also added an option to sign up for an annual membership. With this option, you will get 2 free masterclasses each year and you'll get your vacation package voucher upfront. You can find more information about the vacation vouchers, consultations, and more in the show notes. This week's Patreon shout out goes out to Allison. Thank you so much for being a part of the GeoBreeze Travel Patreon community. So
Yeah.
let's talk about South America a little bit. What are somebody's options if they wanted to fly either from Mexico to South America or the US to South America?
Okay. All right. Now you're getting into my forte. Once you cross over to Mexico and you're flying to the rest of Latin America, generally the point redemptions on any of these airlines plummets in price. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, say I wanted to fly from Houston, Texas, or Dallas to Lima, Peru, right, where I'm at right now, versus from Mexico City or Cancun. Right, it's only 500 or 600 miles farther north. The distance isn't that big of a difference, but the price and points will be massively, massively different. It'll be way cheaper, right? So if you're planning a full like Latin America trip and you don't have the budget, or you don't want to take any long haul and economy, sometimes it makes a lot more sense to fly into Mexico first, maybe enjoy one or two spots there, and then from Mexico, then you can continue on to wherever it is in South America, right? Like Mexico City to Sao Paulo has had fantastic award availability, and it's a really, really long 9 or 10 hours. And all the airlines, they do it way cheaper leaving from Mexico City than from, I don't know, let's say Houston, Dallas, or any of these other US cities that are kind of close. So that's a good strategy to get to the southern part of South America with a cheaper point budget, is start in Mexico first, right? And then as far as airlines go, Avianca is just forget it. I wouldn't even bother with their business class. Their LifeMiles program is fantastic. AeroMexico is pretty good. They're not like amazing, but I would say they're up to par with, the big US three airlines, which isn't anything to drag home about, but it's an acceptable level of business class. They've restored most of their service, and AeroMexico, you can book it with LifeMiles, which is Avianca's program. You could book it with any SkyTeam partner, and Delta bought 49% of AeroMexico. So there's a lot more award availability with Delta as well. And then LATAM is everyone's favorite airline for long distance business class. It's actually like an agglomeration of different airlines called LATAM Chile, LATAM Peru, LATAM Brazil. And the reason they do it like that is because of all right, this is more an AV geek stuff than points stuff. What is it called? Like the Open Skies Agreement or something like that, where an airline can only fly domestic if it's like, owned majority by either the government, or like more than 51% has to be located of the company in that country. I don't know. Either way, they have all these subsidiaries, but ever since LATAM left One World, it became really hard to book LATAM. The funny thing is they made this big scene, but then bit by bit they reestablished all their old relationships. So I think it was just a fight between LATAM and American Airlines. There was some really bad blood. I don't know the exact details behind it, but it seems at this point, most of the alliances are back to where they were. But the biggest loss for US based flyers heading to Latin America is now you don't have the ability to book. You can't use American Airlines points to book LATAM anymore. But I have been using, this is actually how we got in touch, was Asia Miles. So Asia Miles isn't One World, but LATAM reestablished a relationship with them. And it used to be, so Asia Miles, like people are really turned off about Asia Miles, which is the award program for Cathay Pacific, because they're a point booking system. Their portal is useless. Like you can't get anything done on it. It just constantly returns errors. It doesn't show the correct availability. And it used to be that you have to call and wait on hold, and everybody hates doing that. I hate doing it. Nobody likes to call the airlines. But now they have this live chat feature, and the agents are really good, and the wait time is rarely more than 5 or 10 minutes. And you can hit them up and say, I'm looking for availability here and I'm looking for availability there. It's really hard to figure out what the award availability on LATAM is, because for some reason Expert Flyer removed all the award availability. Like it doesn't show you anymore, but you can chat and ask them. And that's how I found some really good deals. And there's a lot of open availability because it's hard to book on points. It makes there more availability on points. And actually, a lot of people think you can't book LATAM with British Airways anymore, but they've actually retained their alliance. What British Airways did was a little bit sneaky. Basically, they removed the LATAM from populating in their search results, but it's all still there. So you have to call. So one sneaky thing you could do if you have British Airways or the Iberia Avios is contact Asia Miles first, find out about the availability, and then call British Airways. But I don't know. For some people that might be a little bit too much. It's like, well, I'll just pay the $500. Like, I don't want to spend the next 2 hours figuring this out. But and then what's some of the other airlines? Gol, it's for Brazil. They're one of Brazil's biggest airlines. They can be booked with American Airlines, but you have to call, which is annoying. I've used that before, and guess that's about it. Yeah, I guess the main key point here, if you didn't know, is if you're trying to get down to Argentina and you don't want to deal with southern Brazil, Sao Paulo, you don't want to do like a 15-hour flight from the U.S. Just hop to Mexico first and see what's available from the business class flights from there to South America are way less competitive. U.S. I don't know those even during COVID times their business class cabins are always full. They always find people that want them. So it's just a tip.
Yeah, that's a really good tip to do a positioning flight to Mexico before trying to do the long haul business class flight. And another thing is if you're trying to do multiple flights within South America, whether it's Northern South America, Southern South America, the United Excursionist perk is great too. All you need to do is go from the US to somewhere in South America, say like Ecuador, and then another flight to South America, let's say Peru, and then back to the US, and that middle leg's gonna be free. It has to be within the same zone and there's certain ways to structure itineraries where you could get 2 round trip flights. It's more than we're gonna get into for this podcast, but we do have a master class that
Yeah,
covers the United
I
Excursions
might need
perk
to take it.
in full detail.
Yeah.
So from all of the options, which one's your favorite? Which one's like the most luxurious to fly in South America or anywhere in
Mm,
Latin America?
oh man, that standard's been set pretty low. Well, there's no first class within Latin America. You can fly British Airways first class, Air France first class. So Emirates was doing a Fifth Freedom flight from Barcelona to Dubai, but I don't think they offered first class on that routing. And I think there was one. Oh, of course, Lufthansa does a first class from Mexico City to Frankfurt. But within Latin America, they're a little bit behind the time. I mean, not even behind the times. I guess it's just supply and demand. People aren't really, everyone's just trying to fly as cheaply as possible. So there aren't too many luxurious options. But I guess good thing during COVID is a lot of these airlines took the time to reconfigure their planes to add more lay flat seats where there used to just be recliner seats. So it's getting easier to find lay flat seats. But I guess if you had to choose like within Latin America, LATAM would probably be the best service at least as of this writing. But it's pretty standard lay flat business class. It's like I'd put it about the same quality as what does United call their Polaris, something like that. It's about the same as Polaris, let's say.
Polaris is nice.
It's
Looks
nice,
really nice.
nice, nice, but not like blow your socks off. It's not like Singapore first class or anything. There's no lobster or caviar. Is that really what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah. So with everything that you've learned from flying all these different routes in Latin America, what would be your number one piece of advice? Do you want to talk about the Avianca booking portal and why you said their program is great, but you shouldn't actually fly on their airplanes?
Okay, so LifeMiles has some really good redemptions, and they have so many first of the Star Alliance is massive, right? You get United, Air Canada, Colombia's own. Sometimes these domestic flights last minute can be a little pricey in cash. You use them in points. They're so useful, but they also have non-alliance partners as well. So beyond Air Canada, Lufthansa, United, their own metal, Avianca. They also partner up with Copa Airlines. Well, I guess Copa Airlines is in Star Alliance as well. And then they also partner with AeroMexico. Right. So for me, those are like all the top airlines that I use, right? Is AeroMexico, Copa, Avianca. But the airline itself is in bad shape right now. But they are cutting down to the bone. Like I think they just opened up their lounges, but most of them remain closed. There's absolutely no service whatsoever. And another thing that really annoys me about Avianca is in 2022, This is not recorded in April 2020. In 2022, they're still boarding back to front, including business class. So if you're in seat 1A, like, or 2, like, you'll be the very, very last person to board. And I think they're getting rid of business class altogether for all but their very longest routes. And especially on their narrow body, single aisle jets, are pulling out all the recliner seats and jamming in more seats. So they've pretty much abandoned their business class product at this point. So I wouldn't recommend it right now. Maybe things will change. They're just, well, unless you just don't care, and they happen to have the routing and the time's okay. And you're like, all right, well, I know I'm getting absolutely nothing and no meal and no service and no lounge. And I'm going to go use the priority pass lounge or whatever. And you're okay with that. But just know what you're signing up for is the quote unquote soft product is all but non-existent right now. It's not a diss to Columbia or to the airline. I'm just kind of stating facts, is that the airline's in really bad shape. And for that reason, but that's it. You can play it to your advantage, right? So LifeMiles sells their miles so cheap. They do these insane sales where you can get the points for like 1 cent each or 1.2 cents each. And I've never speculatively bought miles just because I just have so many from credit card signups as a US person with good credit, and plus from my last business and so on. I don't need it. But if you don't have access to that, like, a lot of times it makes sense to buy LifeMiles, and they're so easy to use. And my favorite part about LifeMiles is with United, unless you have the same cabin available the entire time, it won't populate. But there's a lot of times where, say you want to fly Lufthansa first class or Cathay Pacific first class, but the final 1 hour leg, they only have premium economy or economy. You can select which, like, the class of service that you want for each route to get it to populate, which makes it a lot easier to take first class, which, as you know, can be notoriously hard to find availability. I wouldn't recommend flying first class right now until they restore service, but we can leave that story for another day.
Okay. Great advice. And speaking of great advice, can you give a shout out to somebody else on the internet who listeners should go follow for awesome points and miles tips?
Credit cards and cars. I don't know how this guy does it. He might have some people on the inside, but he manages to get people like status on airlines without having to fly them or hit any. I don't know how he does it.
Credit cards and cars?
Credit cards, cars.
Awesome. I'll definitely need to check that out. And where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me at Points Panda is my handle on Instagram and Twitter. And my website is pointspanda.com. And you can reach me on the form there, or just message me on at Freddy at pointspanda.com. It's Freddy with a Y. And yeah, I'm always happy to give free advice on airline bookings and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and telling us all about all the different airline routes in and around Latin America.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. If any of the cards mentioned in today's episode piqued your interest, please check out the links in the show notes for more information on any of the cards. Also, if you apply for a card using the links on that page, I may receive a commission too, so please and thank you. P.S. I hear the links work better in Internet Explorer or Safari, and sometimes the credit card applications tend to glitch out in Chrome. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to make even more travel hacking friends, please sign up for the Patreon to access our monthly masterclass hangouts. We dive deep into a particular points program each month, and you'll get to ask all of your travel hacking questions and enjoy being around other people who enjoy points and miles just as much as you and I do. If you would like an invite to the next one, head over to geobreezetravel.com/hangouts to sign up to be on the invite list. Take care and happy travels!